I call the honourable member Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to speak on this appropriation debate, and I'd be keen to bring the debate back to the matter before us, which was the budget, and the budget that was delivered by Bill English, the fifth budget that he has delivered, confirms New Zealand is on the right track, with forecasts of economic growth, more jobs, rising wages and a return to surplus by 2014-15. And there is no doubt that talking to business people up and down the street, that this is still not an easy time to be in business, particularly if you're in retail. We've had 5 years now of the global financial crisis and difficult times, headwinds that many business people and families throughout New Zealand have struggled with and struggled against, combined with the devastating Christchurch earthquakes that have made for a particular challenge for New Zealand. But while these challenges remain, Mr. Speaker, the economic recovery here in New Zealand is gaining momentum, driven by low interest rates, investment and strong export prices. Mr. Speaker, economic growth at 2.4% to the year to March 2013 is almost the same as Australia. If we cast our eyes around at our traditional countries that we compare ourselves against, we were looking at 2.5% in Australia, so just a fraction above in Australia, 1.8% GDP growth in the United States, 1.4% in Canada, 0.2% in Japan, 0.6% in the United Kingdom, and negative 1.1% in Europe. So when you compare New Zealand's progress with those countries, you have to say that all in all, New Zealand and this government's financial management has been very effective and it's done well. Meantime, wages are growing, the cost of living increases have been modest, and interest rates are at 50-year lows. Household income has risen 20% in the past 4 years and is expected to rise by almost 20% more in the next 4 years. And the fiscal outlook, as we've heard many times, and we've heard indeed people from the other side of the House commenting on this, saying that we are on track to be back in surplus by 2014 and 15. And people might say, well, that's all very well and good. I've heard in the past Labour members saying, oh, yes, we would have done that as well if we were in government. Well, their track record certainly does not indicate that. Yes, it is true that the Labour Party ran surpluses while it was in government. They were bequeathed a very well organised government by the 1990s national governments, and they continued in a reasonably fiscally prudent manner, and they should be congratulated for that in the first 6 years. But the problem was not what they did during the first 6 years, it was what they did in the last 3 years in particular, bringing in a number of decisions and new spending areas, which meant that while they managed to maintain surpluses while they were in government, when they left, the projections for the next 10 years were of continued deficits, and the projection was that this country was going to have 60% of its GDP in debt by 2020 if we'd carried on the way that the Labour government was going, and that no government, no right-minded government or country would want to be putting itself in that condition. So we did have to make substantial changes, and to go from a position where we were running a deficit of $18 billion only 2 or 3 years ago because of a combination of wanting to maintain a level of support for the most vulnerable in our society and dealing with the Christchurch earthquakes, having a massive surplus to a deficit to a position now next year will be back in surplus, as I think an achievement upon which everybody in this government can be proud.
Laudable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the problem is that is not to say that we've solved all the issues facing New Zealand, and the government is still large. We're looking at 43% of all total government spending is equivalent to about 43% of GDP, and that is too large in my opinion.
What's a better figure?
And also, I might add, we hear a lot about the opposition saying, oh, well, we should be somehow worried about the current account deficit, and somehow we need to increase savings in New Zealand. And I agree that both of those things are an issue, although I'm intrigued to know as to what precisely Russell Norman is suggesting that we do about it, because ultimately, while the government is getting itself back into surplus, individual New Zealanders in their homes or in their businesses make decisions about whether they want to borrow money or invest offshore or bring in fresh capital, and that effectively underlies the current account deficit. And it's people making free decisions. So I don't know what Russell Norman is suggesting, whether he's suggesting that somehow we should stop people making free decisions. What precisely is proposing to stop or to change the current account deficit issue, which has been around for 40 years, I don't know. It seems to me the only way you can really solve the issue over the long time is to grow the economy substantially, and everything that the Greens suggest is generally against growing the economy, and it is to increase savings. And it's why I'm always left puzzled when I'm told that we should increase savings, but the two overwhelming themes of Labour and the Greens policy tends to be bring in a capital gain tax. Well, if you're trying to encourage people to save, why would you then increase taxes on the result of saving, which is capital? So if you save all your life and you put your money into your house or your business, they're now saying we'll introduce a capital gains tax in order to take it off you, and somehow that is going to encourage saving. I've never quite understood that logic. And it's interesting that it's a bit like the Greens. They always understand the logic of you need to increase taxes on cigarettes in order to stop people from smoking, but they refuse to accept the same logic when it comes to you don't increase the taxes on working because that may discourage work and income. The logic seems to depart from their understanding at that point. And then when it comes to saving, if you're trying to encourage people to save, why would you increase taxes on saving through a capital gains tax is beyond me.
That's a very good point.
We've also, but the other theme of their policy always seems to be about just a little bit more inflation would be a good thing as well. So we always have to push away about the Reserve Bank Act and somehow soften our line there. Focus less on inflation, maybe print some money, or no, they're not quite sure whether they want to do that anymore. And again, that is, it doesn't fit very well with the idea of increasing savings, because when inflation robs the savings of the thrifty, and when money can no longer be relied upon as a store of value, particularly if you're into quantitative easing, then savings and investment are undermined. So if you're talking about increasing saving while at the same time you're undermining the value of money, then you're going backwards and forwards at the same time, which is in essence what they seem to be talking about. Now, just carrying on, so where I see the challenges for this country are still in what is forecast as relatively modest growth for New Zealand, and I think we've done very well through difficult times, but we could be doing better still. And how do you increase growth? Well, there seems to be two areas really. You increase your use of resources, and the government is working very hard in the oil and gas area and trying to encourage us to make a living in this country, and that's important, and I'm glad to see one or two people on the other side agree with that. The other area is about increasing productivity, innovation and entrepreneurship in our businesses and in our communities, and that's what the business growth agenda is all about, Mr. Speaker. It's about and some features of this budget, which I could mention briefly, is $100 million a year being put into internationally focused growth package, providing extra research and development assistance to businesses, and additional funding for tourism, and more resources for marketing to New Zealand's international students. And those are the sorts of things that I think will make a difference in terms of encouraging innovation in those important sectors. And then if we look at the package for science and innovation funding, which is increased by $50 million, we're investing millions and millions of dollars into research and development in this country, and that is designed to help New Zealand businesses grow and create genuine jobs that will build the savings that ultimately will solve some of the issues that the other side are talking about. I'd also want to mention the ACC cuts, levy cuts, that we'll see another $300 million being freed up by reducing ACC, and that is a result of effective management of that system. And the reality is that the New Zealand economy is built by a host of small businesses, and those small businesses struggle very hard with those ACC levies. You feel like you've got on top of things, and I remember it well. You feel like you've got on top of your business, you're doing well, and next thing you know, a huge invoice comes from ACC, and I think the best thing we can do to encourage businesses around this country is to reduce those levies, and I'm very proud of this budget on account of that basis. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Shane Jones.
Sir, that was the